Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Growth Support Conversation. My name is Neil, and today I'm here with Ty Givens to talk about, what happens when you jump into CX leadership and kind of the messy joys of being super prepared for everything it's going to throw at you, which is always not the case. So in order to talk about that, Ty, do you want to introduce yourself, where you're coming from, and how we're going to get started today?
Yeah, so hi everybody, I'm Ty Givens. I have been in support operations 25 years. I feel like I'm gonna stop saying that because makes me feel really old, but it is my truth. I started out in workforce management and then I moved into running teams. And I got to a point where I would be the leader that was brought in to mature CX teams. So you imagine a startup experiences some, level of success, and now they need someone to come in and help scale the team. That someone would be me because I came from larger companies. And that was fun because I met a lot of leaders along the way who were like, hey, you come run the team. And now I'm inheriting them, and it has been a journey. So yeah, that's my story. I'm a dinosaur.
Oh, well, it's a great experience to hear. And I'm curious, when you jump into those companies, you say, hey, I'm coming in to help mature those teams. How many existing supports or service leaders did you run into that were like, I have no idea, send help?
Pretty much all of them, especially when I got to the startup world. So my career started with like Office Depot, Home Depot. Actually, at Home Depot, the leaders there were very inexperienced. I think sometimes people, when companies, at least when they're starting out with customer support, they think it's so easy that they just go get any nice person to do it. And it's not until they figure out, oh, wait a second, like if I just hire someone to just answer, again, aging myself, phones or reply to emails or do chats or whatever that is, I'm going to end up blowing through a lot of money because they're not very operational, but they are, highly qualitative. And in startups, when you start out, you're hiring for culture, you're hiring for that qualitative, let's make all the customers happy. And then one day somebody looks at the financials and goes, we're burning through money, we need to tighten up. And then they bring in someone like me who has to try to turn this ship, because it's harder to turn a ship than it is a speedboat.
That's definitely true. When you start building, or keep that in mind early, you're always set up for success in that sense. I was also one of those people that was a startup. Hey, go help customers and then see what we can do.
Well, look at
you.
So look at you now, though. I mean, it works really well for most, and a lot of people it does. I mean, you have the benefit of really not knowing what you don't know. For me, I came into like these teams with a lot of information around me because the people who developed me in my career were career individuals, 15, 20 years in the space. So I didn't go into leadership not knowing what it was I needed to do. I fully understood what I needed to do. What I found with the leaders that I was working with is they just didn't know. And they also didn't understand the weight of their words. We had supervisors dating reps, and they just didn't understand because they were 21, 22, and for them it was about the title and the money. And so that was something that I had to help them understand. Like, actually, the role that you're in, yes, it pays well and has a nice title, but you have a lot of influence. And so let's talk about what the weight of your words means as a leader now. I learned that from people who have been leading for, decades.
I think that's something that if you just go in one directional and you're like, okay, I'm just going to do it because that's the journey that I think I should go on. It's always not always the best outcome in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, in transparency, I don't fancy myself the best people leader. I'm heavily operational and I can be a little bit stoic. So I'm an introvert naturally. You may not come across like in this type of setting, but if you meet me in person, you'll find that I'm very quiet and I'll sit in the corner. Um, with I remember working with a team member. I was at a healthcare company, and her goal was to become a supervisor. She didn't really know what a supervisor did. She didn't understand the expectation of the role, but to her, that was the next level for her. And I cautioned her because I said, you realize that when you become a people leader, you are responsible for the people, meaning that the decisions and choices that they make are a reflection of you. And you cannot control people fully. So you're going to be in a space where you're constantly trying to course correct. That's okay. That's what I want, until she got in it. And then she realized, like, oh my gosh. So I think that there is a special personality type. And there are more of those that exist in, I think, operational brains, but who are just really good at leading and managing people. And then there's a really rare hybrid of people who can do both. I'm more operational. I'm okay with that. I know what I don't know. Like, hey, that's fine. But there are some people who can do both. I, for one, am just someone who leans more towards building and scaling. And then typically when I would go into these companies, I would always look for someone to help me manage the people side, because I was not great there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's always interesting to hear the stories of people who believe that the people management track or the vertical career path is the only career path that's available within the space, especially since, for example, like nowadays, you have also very specialist operational roles that are a bit more complex that you can grow into or develop your career into. What do you think causes that notion that the vertical is the only way?
I think there's two things actually. One, I think that if we go back to, again, I'm going to age myself this whole time, so please, everyone, just bear with me. But if we take it back to the 80s, that's all you saw. 90s, that's all you saw, is that the next step up is to be in some sort of management of people. That's what we learned the next step was. And then the other part is that a lot of leaders don't really understand that there are other roles that may not be manager roles that are still fulfilling. So we take it back to my shoe dazzle days. When I inherited that team, there were about 60 agents, I think. And there were supervisors in place, but the ratios were really high for supervisor to agent. And the supervisors that were in place were lovely people, but they had not worked in other operations in the same capacity. So we didn't have quality. We didn't have workforce management. We had a bunch of people who were answering phone calls and doing things like that, but there was no real structure to it. So what I did, and we had no budget, by the way, because this is 6 months before the
Classic.
happened, right? Like $0. I created these different roles for people to learn how to do something different. Like, let's teach you how to quality check. Now, we were quality checking, I don't know, less than 10% of the contacts, but what that did is it still gave me something to look into to understand how people were engaging with customers, gave supervisors something to have conversations around, and it gave a person on the team a new skill set to use. They may not have gotten paid more, but that trajectory is why a lot of those people are now, leading quality teams of their own or in leadership roles of their own in different organizations. And I did the same thing for workforce management. I just created opportunities for them to learn new skills. And I think that when you are working in like a contact center environment, especially in a startup, you don't really see another way up other than what your boss is doing. The other option is that you see yourself out of there, meaning I'm going to go to another department because I think there's more opportunity there. But I also think there's like some sort of, notoriety attached to a higher title, even if it doesn't come with money. I've seen lots of people take big titles with no money. I don't get that, but I've seen it. There's a stigma of I'm more important. somehow to this organization.
Bit of authority and hierarchy as well, and maybe it gives you that political positioning within a company, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's always a question of like, what does it actually entail when you take these kind of roles, right? So when I think of, oh yeah, I'm going to be a service leader and I'm going to work on running this contact center that has one specific thing, and nowadays you see a vastly different titling of roles and scopes and what kind of the things are. How do you think somebody could find clarity in what the scope of their role really should be as they grow into kind of these things? When you say, "Hey, I'm a CX leader," what does that mean, and how can you find what exactly that means for your organization?
So that's a very good question. I think it's been almost 3 years ago now. I did a podcast for like 5 seconds. I think there's maybe 10 episodes. And one of them was, what does a support leader actually do? Or something along those lines. And it talks about understanding that when you're reviewing a job posting, there's a lot of times you're going to get a job posting that's actually like 3 or 4 jobs. And I think it has a lot to do with the evolution of the support leader role. So if we go back to when I started out, the role of like manager or supervisor really was about managing the people, because at that point you had quality, you had workforce management, you had training, you had all of these departments and functions, and I'm talking about larger companies that existed to just do their job. I mean, we had a whole telecom department whose job was just to program phones. You didn't have to know how to do it all. All you had to do as a leader was be there for your team. Even development of people wasn't as strong as it is today. It was more of like being a point of escalation. Leads would walk the floor to help take calls, and then you would have like the manager or supervisor who would deal with the severely complex issues that required cross-functional support. That was very easy. Okay, now you take it to, let's say 2000, the 2010s, and the role of the support leader looks vastly different now, because let's say you're in a startup environment, you don't have those functions and roles around you. So you don't have anybody that you can go to say, hey, can you help with this? Or if you do, it's very limited. Like at Shudazzle, I had a person who did the tech side or who handled the phones. So, he could help us there. But as far as making sure that the operation ran, that was 100% on me, which meant that I wasn't able to be present for people because my job was to run the operation across the board. So I always say that it's impossible to be in the past, present, and future and work across people, process, and tech simultaneously. So if you can look at a job description through that visual, right? Am I expected to be in the past, present, and future? If you are, then you'll know that I'm probably looking at a job that is not meant for one person. If you have to work across people, process, and tech, and when I say people, process, and tech, I don't mean like at a very high level. I mean like you got a job description that says, manages a team of 20 and conducts one-on-ones weekly. What? And then, the other one is, oversees all escalations and adjust processes as needed. Okay, administers Zendesk. Sir, ma'am, whomever, this is not a job for one person.
I'm getting team leads and I'm getting a Zendesk admin, all
right? Yeah, and like that's actually why I ended up starting CX Collective. It used to be called the Workforce Pro, but this was like, I think it was before 2022. We're coming up on 10 years, which is kind of crazy. But I'm excited about it because I think it took 5 years for me to realize this was actually my job. So, but I created the company because when I was at Thrive Market, I had to grow a scaling startup. And the Thrive Market was a beast. The growth was tremendous, right? And I was brought in as like the leader of CX, but I was very empathetic. And I think that doesn't always serve me well in hyper growth environments because I'm not about the dollars like that. So, but the reality is that I get into that role and I'm looking around and I'm like, nobody understands what I need. Not just the team that I had, but not even my boss. And I also didn't have the words to ask for what I needed in a way that resonated with them. So I created this company so that so leaders didn't have to be in the space of saying, hey, I need help with this function, and getting that no because it's a full-time job. And they're saying, no, we can't afford that on the budget. Okay, but can I hire this company to do this project for me? If they can kickstart it, then I can have, someone else on the team actually run it after that, because it's already going to be laid out and clear, as opposed to having to get someone who has never done it before to try to build it. So that's why I started this company, is to help other leaders get the things that they needed to be successful, and increase that probability of a yes, because I was told no a lot.
Yeah, and it's like, why reinvent the wheel when there are things and resources out there that can really help you to actually know exactly what you're doing. I love what you also mentioned, like it's impossible to work across all of those different sections and categories if you need to be in the past, present, future, and people, process, and tech in that sense, because I found myself saying more in the past couple of months or thinking like, is this something that is with me, or is this something that is with support? Because coming from growing the team from one to now actually having a function and team, it's so easy to fall into the trap of like doing a lot of things just because you happen to be in that situation, and then the lines get a lot more blurred of like, yeah, Neil's doing that because Neil does that, versus Neil's doing that because that's a support responsibility, is two very different things. And I think what you are mentioning, like you need to make those lines clear, or at least get that clarity, whether it's from someone like yourself, another leader, or a resource that can help. You mentioned you started this to really give that structure and foundation to other leaders and functions. Can you tell me a little bit about what CX Collective, how that looks like in practice, and what it is that actually builds that foundation?
Yeah, so imagine someone described this as a SWAT team who drops into your company and fixes your challenges, and then once everything's good, we fly away. Unless the visual of that is pretty cool, and now with the improvement of AI, I might figure out some way how to bring that to life. But yeah, so basically, funny story, and this is something, because I don't believe in competition. So anyone who is in consulting looking to get to you could ask me anything, I'll tell you, it doesn't matter. But when I first started out in like this consulting space, I didn't know how to describe what I wanted to do. The company was called the Workforce Pro because I thought everyone wants workforce management. Everyone's going to pay attention to this. No one paid attention to it. Zero people paid attention to it. But what I learned very early on is that while I may understand what the client is facing, the way that the client is experiencing that is very different. So a client will say, my Zendesk isn't working. Can you help us configure Zendesk? What they're really saying is we have a process issue. Zendesk is, what it's going to do whatever you tell it to do, just like Front or Gorgeous or anything else, but you have to have your processes set up in order for it to function properly. So I can't tell a client you have a problem with your processes. Oh no, you have an issue with it. Well, maybe let's try it this way. So we tend to be we have two verticals really: startups who haven't gone to market yet. They're preparing to go to market. They are funded and they know that they're going to scale. That is a very different setup than I'm just going to have someone answer calls for a little bit and see how it goes. So when they know that, they come to us. We build the infrastructure for them. So that's helping them define policies, helping them set up processes, helping them set up systems. Depending on how quickly they grow, we'd even help with their org structure and all of those things. We are not a BPO though, so we don't actually take the contacts unless they're doing like a small beta. and we know that it's going to be a handful of contacts, and we can use that to like better inform the knowledge base or something like that. So there are small occasions like that. The other client that we work with most are companies that are either scaling or maturing, and those can kind of be, combined in a way, because if you are scaling, that means that you are maturing. That means that the things that you used to do don't work anymore. So for those, we're kind of like taking the lid off, and we have to become part of that company, which is a lot of work. I don't know if people really understand that. Like, it is a lot of work. I've been personally inside of over 50 companies. That's a lot of companies to know their intricate ins and outs, and to also learn that good customer experience means vastly different things across verticals and companies and things like that. But you go in and you have to like learn. You have to learn from the ground up, like how they're functioning, why they do what they do. You have to throw out any preconceived notions, and you have to meet them where they are. So we have a client now. They've been with us nearly 3 years, and one of the best compliments that I've gotten from them is that you guys don't make us feel like we don't know. And that is the main thing, is that every business is wherever they are is where they are. You have to meet them there. So for us, we're listening to the vision, which usually comes from, VP of Commerce, VP of Support, CEO. They have this idea of where they want to take the company. And they have talented people who are executing daily, but who may not be able to execute strategically without some sort of plan. So they kind of insert us in to like work on that plan and to bring things to life for them.
Nice. That's a really interesting approach. I mean, you're just like, hey, we're here to set you up for success and good luck, and make sure that you have that clarity for whoever will be the leader that takes that baton, right?
Yep.
To where they have the clarity and structure that they need. You also mentioned that you had some playbooks for leaders who are trying to get structure and developing. Is that right?
Yes, I do. So the fun part about the playbooks is that they started out as like courses, and then then it was like certification paths. And I felt like a lot of places are doing certification paths. I didn't want to do what everyone else was doing. In my mind, I wanted almost like a micro learning sort of thing where let's say I am I'm a new leader, and I'm tasked with defining the right KPIs for my organization. And I've never done that before, right? Now, granted, there are plenty of communities out there that you can go and ask people, and that's cool. But sometimes you don't really want to ask because you want to feel like or you want to figure it out, or at least come into the conversation with some sort of foundational understanding. So, for example, if that's the case, then there's a playbook where you can actually learn about the metrics by channel, right? And then what those metrics will tell you. And it's a micro learning. You can go as fast as you want. The videos that are included are like 2 to 3 minutes, just so that you can get an overview of the concept. If that's enough for you, then you move on to the next thing. And then while you're going through the playbook itself, you get, as I mentioned, the video that explains what's happening. You get a lot of written content, so you can read through that as you see fit. And then you also get case studies. So we looked into how other companies are applying these same theories. And then you get a playbook exercise where you start thinking about, how does this impact me in my day-to-day? Like right there. It's not like you wait till the end to take a quiz. You're going to be building this actively. And then at the end, you print the whole thing down, and now you've got your plan, right? Or at least you can speak to whatever this is with far more intelligence when your boss is saying, why are we measuring handle time? And you didn't know. Now you can tell them, well, we're measuring handle time because it goes into, planning, so they understand, 1, what is our customer tolerance? 2, how many people do I need to hire? You can speak to it intelligently. And I'll tell you, the metrics one came out of a conversation when I was 24. I started running my first department at 24 years old. And I had a boss who challenged me on why we had a service level. So again, going back to phones, 80% in 20 seconds was industry standard. Our service level was 100% in 30 seconds. Well, why do we do that? I'm like, I'm 25. I was like, I don't know. That's what they said it's going to be. Well, if we change the service level, what does that mean? What is that going to do? Like, what should it be? I had no idea how to approach that. So, like, in a lot of ways, I made the playbooks for 25-year-old me who didn't know, didn't feel comfortable asking, and wanted to figure it out.
I think this is the best route to take. I always say like, oh, whenever I'm trying to think of something that I need to make, I'm like, oh, what does me 5 years ago want to know? Like, what should have been those things? I think that's a great way. It's more teaching people how to fish and have those conversations rather than just giving them that. I know that when I was starting or some conversations that I observe in the communities, you mentioned, yeah, you might not necessarily want to ask. You can. They're great communities and people are super helpful. Depending on where you ask or what you ask, people will also just be like, oh yeah, you got to measure this and this and this and this,
Mhm.
but it's not necessarily saying, okay, but is that actually the right things for you,
Yeah.
in that sense, and here's how you should go about like figuring out if it is even right for you to measure those things or not, because you can have all the measurements in the world, but if they're not tailored to your situation, then it's great, then yeah, you need to make sure that they are. I have maybe a hot take question for you if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious because you're talking about a lot of the people looking in the certifications directions, a little bit more formal training in that side. And whenever I go to look for CX or service training, or I have one of my team members wants to develop in the support operations specialty, which I think is amazing. I love it. I'm all about it. But
Mhm.
whenever I go out to seek a formal kind of look at knowledge for it, or training or development, there's, in my opinion, I don't feel like it suits or builds the modern CX professional or service professional in that sense. How do you feel about that current state of development for our function?
I agree too. And it is part of the reason why I decided to go a little bit rogue and not do the traditional route. Let me tell you, it's hard to get out here and just be like, I know they're doing that. I'm going to go over here and do the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like a lot of times, because I went to the School of Hard Knocks, so I don't have any official certifications in CX. I have an MBA in organizational leadership, but I don't have those things. I've been doing this a really long time. I don't have to sit in a room with someone telling me how to think about CX because I have lived it, right? And so when I started building the playbooks, my idea was, are we going to be able to have a person walk away understanding this concept with the ability to apply it? And I think that that's what's missing in a lot of the courses that are out there, is that the courses that are out there are designed to kind of like take you through this long journey so they can charge you a lot of money. And then at the end of it, you're kind of like, I mean, that was cool, but how do I apply this and how do I use it? Versus I price playbooks in a way where if your company won't pay for it, you won't mind buying it yourself, and you walk out of it knowing what to do. I think that and this is no critique about any particular certification path. I don't know them all, so please, grain of salt as I speak on this.
Oh yeah. Also, I'm sure there's something I've missed, but
Yeah, there might be some great stuff. If you know, like, please by all means do that. But um sometimes these programs are not generated to actually help you. They're generated to create revenue streams. And so because of that, what you're going to get is, enough information to feel like maybe you got something, but then, oh, that's going to be hidden in version 2. And then you got to go and do that. And then you got to recertify, and you got to, the things that I've done are really about like, how can I help you? Because I would get a lot of people who would reach out to me, which is nice. And they would say like, hey, can you help me figure this thing out? Well, I work in and on a company. I actually have 2 companies because the playbook site is called CX Collective Advantage, and then there's CX Collective for the consulting. I don't have time to help people, but I want to help people. So I'm like, well, if I were working with you, here's kind of like how I would approach it. Like, try the playbook and see how that goes for you. Because the playbook, as you mentioned, it teaches you to fish. It gets you thinking about how this applies in your environment, not a one size fits all or that worked for so and so. So that's what we're going with. It's what works for you. What questions are you trying to answer? So it helps you to start thinking about things yourself. Um, and I don't, again, like I said, I don't know everything that's out there, but I can only speak for what drove me to do it. and what made me not want to go the tried and true path.
Yeah. I think always being able to actually take away something applicable and, hey, I can use this today and really think about it is always a better route than something too much. I work in e-learning, so this is also one of the questions why I'm asking in a sense, because one of the things that we hear, we do HR e-learning in that sense for HR organizations. And one of the things is like that we really try to focus on is it's too much theory in some cases, that it's like, hey, that's so theoretical, that's great, but I want to be able to actually like take away and apply it. So I definitely agree with you. I think that application aspect of you should actually be able to go out and do something tangible with it as well.
Yeah, and
I know.
I hate trading. Just want to say that. So like, if you can understand, I hate trading. I'm the person that's going to go to the index. I'm just going to go try it. If you just want to jump, if you want to get into a playbook and just go straight to the exercise, do that. Like there's no one way that you have to do this thing. Do it how it works for you. But at the end of the day, have something that you can actually execute on. That's the main thing. So a playbook or course, whatever, built by someone who hates training, I'm going to get straight to the action because I don't want to. I'm to go through all this stuff. I just tell me what I need to know and tell me how to apply it. And thank you for your time.
I'm the exact same way. I'm the worst. Like, obviously, as I mentioned, I'm in e-learning, so like I always tell people like, yeah, this is what you need to do to like drive adoption and complete your programs and continue it. And then I jump into a course. I'm like, check it out, check it out, check it out. Okay, yeah, I'm good.
Get to the quiz.
Yeah, it's one of those practice what you preach kind of things, right?
I get
it. I appreciate your time and also sharing your experience and what you've seen through these organizations and yeah, how to create clarity for these people. I know you already know this question is coming because we talked about it before, but maybe if there is one thing that you have learned throughout your career that you still stick to today, it doesn't have to be support specific or CX specific, but what is that thing?
Manage your personal brand. Manage your personal brand. And what that means is the simplest way is, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? And you want to make sure they're saying good things. Now, or they're saying real things, right? Because if it's honest, it is what it is. But be aware of how people receive you. Be open to hearing feedback on how people receive you, and decide of the feedback you receive what you want to action, because you might be okay with it. So that's what I would say. Like for me, I don't focus on being the most polished. I don't care about that. I'm practical. Like I might be a consultant, but I do the work every single day. I'm a practitioner. So I'm not worried about trying to theorize and sound like I know all of the buzzwords. I live this. This is my job. I do this every day. I want to be relatable. So my hope is that if someone talks to me or meets with me or we converse about anything related to operations and, or just life, that they say, I can relate to her. I understand where she's coming from. So manage your brand.
Yeah, also manage your personal brand. I think when people hear that, they think, oh, externally only, but also internally, right? It helps you, especially if you're thinking of career development or advancement. That's going to get you in the room, even if you're not in that room, in that sense.
That's a really good point. One thing I want to say really quickly is that you're interviewing for your next job right now. I tell people that all the time. You're interviewing for your next job right now, whether it's internal, external. When I was at Intuit, I was on my way out. There was a conference or something at Herbalife. I go to that conference at Herbalife. There's just a conversation happening. I raise my hand. I speak on blah, 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 just talking about whatever. And less than a month later, the person who was running the call center at Herbalife reached out to me to say, hey, I have a job for you, and wrote the job description based on my resume that she asked me for at the event. So nice. You never, right? Like when I was like, this is my resume in a job description, right? You never know who's in the room. You never know who you're talking to. The person that you're working with today that you sit next to, that could be the person that brings you in the next place tomorrow. So you're always, always, always interviewing, which is why you have to manage your brand.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much, Ty. And it's been a great conversation, and finally a chance to actually meet you and talk to you, which I think is great and wonderful. If people want to continue that conversation or seek out more or check out these playbooks, where can they find you and find them?
Yes, cxcollective.com/tie. If you go there, it'll take you everywhere you need to go because there are lots of pages. So you start, you can go ahead and do that. And then if you need to, there's a link on there to book a 15-minute intro. It's no sell, no nothing like that. If we just want to talk and say, hey, I'm good with that. As long as it's available, if the time's available, I'll do it.
Nice. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you spending the time.
You too. Thank you.